Hello, and welcome to the 404 Media podcast, where we bring you unparalleled access to hidden worlds, both online and IRL. 404 Media is a journalist-founded company and needs your support. To subscribe, go to 404media.co. As well as the other bonus content, subscribers can hear us answer their questions in future podcasts. Ask us anything you want on podcast at 404media.co. I'm your host, Joseph, and with me are the 404 Media co-founders, Sam Cole.
Hello.
Emanuel Mayberg.
Hey.
And Jason Kebler.
Hello.
See.
Good to be here.
Yes. No chaotic switch up there. All right, let's start with our first story. We're going to talk about a couple this week as normal. The first one is from Emanuel, and it's AI image detectors are being used to discredit the real horrors of war. Immediately, I will put a content warning here that, we're going to get into some descriptions of violence, inevitably, because this is about the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. It is, of course, a story about AI, but there's a much broader context here. So, Emanuel, first of all, let's do this step by step, because it's a little bit confusing. I admittedly got a little bit confused by this. First, what image did the government of Israel tweet? Because that's where this starts.
Yeah, I think whenever discussing this issue, you have to make a very difficult and somewhat arbitrary choice about when you want to start telling a story. I will back up one step before this image was tweeted, because I think it gives important context for how people were talking about it. And earlier that week, Israel's Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, got on a call with President Joe Biden and told him that 40 babies were beheaded in Israel as part of Hamas's attack. And in a very unusual choice, like this conversation on Bibi's end was televised. And so that information, that claim was out there. And Joe Biden repeated it. And people understandably immediately started looking into it and were like, well, where's the evidence for this claim? And nobody could produce it. And since then, the White House has walked the claim back entirely and said that Joe Biden saw no evidence to this claim. They were just saying it based on what Bibi said to him. And Israel, in turn, has also yet to produce evidence for this specific claim and have walked it back somewhat. Not entirely, but people have sort of backed off this claim. And that is sort of like the environment that this image that the story is about is coming into. And that image is, like, I think the next day or a couple of days later, Israel's official Twitter account and Israel's Prime Minister's official Twitter account tweeted out 3 images. 2 of the images are of what they said are the kind of burnt remains of a baby.
Right.
And then another photo of kind of like the bloody corpse of a baby. And given like the conversation that happened before about this claim that is apparently not real, or at least no one has produced evidence for it yet, they sort of tweeted out to be like, hey, it's like people are saying that we're lying. People are saying that this didn't happen. It's like, here are like these very graphic, horrible images of something that did actually happen.
Like exceptionally graphic. I was almost surprised that they put this out publicly. Then that's almost a whole other discussion of whether a government would do that. But I was kind of shocked that it was put to Twitter. And obviously, we're not going to describe the photos. Maybe you've already seen them if you're listening to this, or maybe you do want to go see them so you have more context. There are versions of them in the story that Emanuel will get to. But
yeah. So those are the images.
Yeah.
And they were out there. And I'll get into like how the AI portion of this gets started, and that is by Ben Shapiro, a conservative Jewish commentator tweeted them out with sort of the same message, like, hey, you're doubting Israel, you're doubting that this atrocity took place, look at this, you know what I mean, witness this,
Right.
look at this horrible thing.
Right.
And shortly after that, people started replying to his tweet with screenshots of an online AI image detector called AI or Not. This is made by a company called Optic, and it is the screenshots were all the same. It's you see the original image, one of the original images
Mm-hmm.
that of the burnt remains that Israel tweeted, and next to it there's just like the claim, like this image is likely generated by AI, and people tweeted at him to sort of say that he is lying and that Israel is lying about the origin of the image.
So yeah, there. Just as a brief aside, there are a lot of these so-called AI image detectors, right? Like, some might be open source, I guess. Others are certainly not. And people turn to these when they're trying to figure out, okay, is this image actually created by AI or not? And they're used for all different sorts of purposes. And this is just one of those tools that was being used. And what did you say? The result was something like 52% AI generated, or something like that. What was the result more exactly?
So there's several of these tools,
Right.
and there's a whole industry for these tools, right? I would say, like on the higher end, you have these specialized companies. They partner with like big corporations. They partner with governments. It is not open source. It's proprietary stuff that
Sure.
they don't let you just access. It's like very expensive. It's like tens of thousands of dollars to have access to these tools. That's the high end. And then on the low end are like free tools online, Chrome plugins, stuff like this. And the one that was tweeted at Ben Shapiro is AI or Not, made by Optic. And the result that it gave is likely generated by AI. And the results that that this tool specifically generates are binary. It's like likely AI, likely human. And
Mm-hmm.
this one said likely AI. I think the one you're referring to is um, once this image started circulating, people on 4chan primarily started inputting the images to all these tools online. And
Mm-hmm.
one of them, which is open source, gives the results in percentages. And what I did in the story, just to show that the tools are not perfect, far from perfect, is take an image from the New York Times, a photograph of a journalist in Gaza who was killed by Israeli bombings, and a photo with a photo credit and like the name of the person who died.
Taken by a real journalist for a real publication. We can pretty sure say that that's a real photo. Yeah.
Yeah, fairly confident. And that tool, this open source tool, said it was 52% likely to be generated by AI.
Which it just sounds like it's just pulling stuff out of its ass. It's insane. Like, how could it even possibly say that? I mean, just to back up slightly. So, this first tool is being used. It's then being spread around. Are people like spreading it widely? Like, how is it being spread exactly? I mean, beyond maybe just replies to Ben Shapiro, or was that sort of the extent of it? Or did you see it spread wider?
Yeah, I think it starts there, and he's visible enough to have for his replies to be viewed by many people.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of everywhere, right? Like I was just looking online, I was looking on Twitter. Mostly I'm looking at Twitter for this. And anyone who posts the image or retweets like the Israeli account tweets, it's in all the replies, and it's in the replies to our story. Like when I tweeted it, I'm still getting replies of that same screenshot of that same AI tool, kind of saying like, "Hey, your article is baloney because look at what this tool is saying," even though the article I think does a good job of
It goes into some
debunking
detail.
the claim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's this. First of all, there's the image of the baby. And now this tool is saying, wait a second, this is AI generated, and people spreading that around. You then come in to cover this, basically, and you speak to a world leading expert on digital manipulated images. Who are they, and what did they say when you came to them with all of this unfolding?
Yeah, so I see the image.
Right.
I see that people are saying it's fake. I look at this tool. I look at the origin of the image, and I sort of have like a reporter's hunch that the image is legitimate. You know what I mean? Based on how the image looks, based on who tweeted it, where it comes from. And I start calling people in the field to kind of get their expertise. I want to say,
In the AI industry field, you mean, not out in the field?
yes, yeah, people who are experts on disinformation and AI images.
Yes.
And eventually, I talked to Hani Farid, who is a professor at UC Berkeley. He is just like one of the top experts in the world about synthesized images. He is best known for PhotoDNA, which is something that he developed with Microsoft, which helps create hashes for images of sexual abuse and sexual abuse of children, kind of like a widely used tool across the industry.
Massively popular and like an industry standard in this sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, and he's also Sam and I got to know him when we were reporting on deepfakes and Pornhub's own moderation tools.
Mm-hmm.
So I got him on the phone, and he immediately was like, "Okay, let me look into this." And he does a few things. So one thing he does is he runs the image through software that is very similar to the software that people use to say that it is fake. It's what he defined it as, like classifiers. And basically the way that this works is you take a bunch of images that are generated by AI, you take about a bunch of images that are not, images that are real photographs, and you have an AI train on them, and then you can feed it images and it'll say, oh, this looks more like AI, this looks more like a real image. So
Sure.
He runs it through his own version of that. That is, the result on that is that it's a real image. That, as he makes clear, is not enough to make a determination. Like, you can't rely on these tools alone, because even if they're like 90% accurate, they get stuff wrong all the time. And there's many reasons why they would get stuff wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So he has this other method, which is just knowing what we know about how AI images are generated and what they're good at and what they're not good at. There are things that they are consistently not good at.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things is how shadows are cast, right? So it's like if there's a light source behind me, it would cast all the shadows like in the same direction, the same angle. And AI is just like not very good at doing that yet.
Yeah, I've literally noticed that myself when I made some AI images the other day, and there was like an outdoor scene of men walking onto a plane, and the shadows were just in the wrong direction sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So and there's shadows in this image that is being disputed that are like very clearly real or in line with what a photograph would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then another example is AI image generators are not very good at generating like intricate, small details densely together. Like, I'm looking at my keyboard, like it would not be very good at all, like the straight angles and characters that are placed on a keyboard. The example that I give in the story is, we wrote this viral story now about SpongeBob doing 9/11, and it's like, if you look at that image, there's like the cockpit console with all like the levers and knobs, and if you look closely, it just gets jumbled together. Right? It's just like the AI it doesn't like sort through all those little buttons and knobs very well. And in the image, there are like small details like that are very clearly in line with what a photograph would look like.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a very detailed photo, which is obviously, part of its graphic nature, but also indicative that it is more likely to be a real photograph. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned 4chan. How exactly did they jump on it in some sort of way?
So I don't know if this originates on 4chan or if it originates on Twitter. What I do know is that, 4chan users as chaos agents, as people who love to kind of wallow in the worst things that are online and make them worse, just jumped into this opportunity to take a very horrible, tragic thing and sow doubt and make people fight about it. And I mean, that's what they did. They just started posting the images, and it's like I can't tell you for certain that this is what is happening, but I would speculate that a lot of the posts that we see online, of the screenshots saying that it's AI generated, is not people genuinely thinking that. It's just people quote unquote trolling,
Yeah.
right? It's people who are just like trying to cause chaos and like make Ben Shapiro feel bad, make me feel bad, make anyone who shares the image and thinks it is horrible, kind of make them feel bad.
Yeah, totally. Jason, I feel like you wanted to jump in.
I mean, I was just gonna say very broadly speaking, like I think I understand why there has been the rise of AI image detectors. It's like you there's deep fakes and people generate AI images, and then there's a natural response to that where there's, well-meaning people who decide to get into this industry and say, hey, we're going to create a tool that will look for specific hallmarks of AI image generation. And I think the way that some of them work, they sort of scan the popular image generating tools like Midjourney, et cetera, and look for like hallmarks that are associated with Midjourney or like the training data, et cetera. As Emanuel said, and I think it's important to point out, it's like these two are black boxes that rely on AI. Like, we don't quite know exactly how they work. You might be able to explain how they work very broadly, but I don't think that you would be able to explain why it gave a specific result to a specific image. Like you could ask the creator of it and they would say, we don't know why this specific tool said that this specific image was likely AI or was not AI or was 52% AI, like 52% possibility that it was AI generated or it was not. So I don't fault the fact that these things exist, but two things. One, I think that DALL-E 3 and all these AI image generating tools, I personally have looked at many, 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 many images, and I feel like I trust myself over any of these images. Like, I think that I have yet to see, to my knowledge, an AI generated image where someone can say 100% I generated this image with AI, and I'm like, that looks like a photo, and I can't tell.
You didn't fall for the Pope one that a lot of people fell for a while ago, which I did not, to be absolutely clear. But that got a lot of people. But you're saying like you still trust your eyes more than anything.
So I think that on a quick scan, sure, I'm probably like, oh yeah, like scrolling through social media, like I don't know. I think I saw the Pope one and I was like, that doesn't seem real. And then it didn't care because I didn't care about it. Like I
Right.
didn't inspect it. But if I were to see something and I was like, oh, this seems important, let me try to figure out if it's AI. The first thing I would do is I would blow it up and I would look at the details. I would look at the shadows. I would look at the hands because AI is still not very good at hands. I would look at, like the straight lines, etc., stuff like that. Going from there, I guess so I trust myself more than I trust these AI generators. With music, it's not really the same because I don't know. I can't tell as well with music. But like with images, they have these hallmarks that I can sort of tell. I've looked at enough of them. The second thing I was going to say is that if an image generator says that this image is 52% likely to be AI, like, and we know that that image detector, AI image detector, is not always correct, is not 100% correct. So there's a margin of error. There's, a confidence interval. There's some doubt there.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? like it doesn't mean anything. And this is a point that I made to Emanuel, who graciously included it in the article. It's like if an image detector that's 90% accurate says something that's 52% likely to be AI, it's like anyone can use that result to argue any point that they want.
Right. Right.
Yeah. On that point specifically, I have to say this because the person who made that tool, which gave the 52% likely to be AI result, um, he listens to this podcast. His name is Matthew. He got in touch with me, and I've added his comment to the article. And what he said about that is that first of all, he says, this is not how I expected people to use this tool. And if I hadn't made it on my own, and I was making it for a real company, possibly, ideally, this company would be quote unquote red teaming the tool and be thinking of ways that it might be used in ways that are bad, which I think is what happened here. But he doesn't have those resources, just something that he made. It's open source, actually, so you can see how it works. But he said that even with all of that, he personally would only trust the result if it was 90% either way, right? But you as a person who's just coming across this tool on the internet, you might not know that. I mean, you probably don't know that. And if you're a 4chan user who's just trying to like sow doubt, then that wouldn't matter anyway, right? You just like take an image, input it in there, and use the result to kind of confuse and anger people. Yeah, sorry, just wanted to clarify that because
I mean, this
Go ahead,
yeah,
Sam.
this idea that like that these tools will be what solves like AI and deepfake detection has always been so misguided and wrong, and we've been saying that since 2017. Like experts have been saying that the whole entire time. We can't out tech our way through this chaos. Like unfortunately, the only way is to use your eyes and like use your critical thinking skills. Like look at the context of where it was presented, the sources, the people who are spreading it. Yeah, it's so messy because we can't ever have just like a black and white, like this is definitely AI, this is definitely not. I think it's really interesting that the Hugging Face tool guy that you talked to was like, this was meant for Redditors. Like this was not meant for like verifying war crimes. This was something that was like not in the scope at all. And I think that's probably where these kind of tools should stay. And leave it to like, I mean, Hani says this, it's like, you're not the CSI. Like you actually can't just sit here and use some Hugging Face tool to tell you what to think. It's not that simple, unfortunately. I wish it was.
Right, totally. More specifically on the war side, Emanuel, the headline again was AI image detectors are being used to discredit the real horrors of war. Now we've explained that series of events and all of the context. I mean, what do you actually mean by that headline? Like what is the danger here and the discrediting of the real horrors of war? What does that mean?
I was doing a very regrettable thing that I have been doing since this whole thing got started, and I was looking at Reddit in bed, and I was reading a thread that I don't even remember what the specific video was, but it was a video from Gaza of something horrible, you know? And I was reading the comments, and I was very surprised and depressed that there was a sentiment from several of people in the thread that was like, well, this video is horrible, but you know how it is now. You can't trust anything. It's like literally, you can't trust anything, is what multiple people were saying. And that's essentially where we are, I think. It's just an environment with so much smoke around everything. The AI, it could be an AI image, it could be real. This result that's saying that it's AI could be authentic or it could be fake. It's just like layers of confusion that are just baked into the internet now. I mean, I was alarmed because I just saw people expressing this sentiment in the wild, which I don't think I've seen yet. But I don't want to be too alarmist and say that I don't think that's going to happen about everything. I think the reason that it is happening here is because of the nature of this specific conflict, which is so disputed and people can't agree about basic facts.
Right.
And it's like,
Yeah.
already, like before AI, before all of this stuff, it's like we didn't need AI to kind of like have confusion and disagreement about what is real and what is not. That's been happening for 70 years, right? It's just like it's always been that way. People have always disagreed about the basic facts. But now you have these tools that give claims kind of like this aura of scientific evidence. It's like I used a tool and the tool says that this is AI, so surely, you know what I mean, it is AI.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just like the new element here, which I think is concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. All right. I will take us to a break and we'll be right back after this. And we're back. Now we're going to talk about something very different. The headline from Jason that we just published is "A trademark dispute is tearing the tiny film photography community apart." I'll also read the subheadline just because, you need a little bit more context in that. Small film camera businesses have been shocked to receive threatening emails from a company called CineStill over who has the right to use the term 800T or 800T. Jason, what the hell is going on here? Like, where does this start?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do this like very quickly because I set out to write like an 800-word story about this, and it ended up being like almost 4,000 words about, as the headline says, the tiny film photography community. But I do think that it's relevant to anyone who cares about technology at all and how technology works in 2023, specifically like how trademark claims are used to prevent competition and prevent sort of upstart communities. So upstart businesses. The very quick version of this is that there's a company called CineStill. It was founded in 2012 in Los Angeles, and it specializes in film photography. So I would say 2012 was one of the low points of sort of people using film, like, that the early 2010s, like Kodak had stopped making a bunch of its types of film. Fujifilm had stopped making some of its types of film.
Very hard to get hold of. Yeah, I remember that.
It was not that popular. And it was kind of around this time that maybe like vinyl records were making a comeback. But now that, like, the long story short, like, film photography is becoming popular again. Still like very niche, but there's all these sort of like upstart companies because people are getting back into it. So CineStill was one of the first companies of this new wave of film photography companies. And they are very famous for this specific type of film called 800T.
Okay.
And that refers to the ISO, which is the speed of the film, which basically is like its sensitivity to light. So 800 is a very fast ISO. It's good for shooting at night, and it's good for shooting in dark environments. And the T refers to the fact that it's tungsten balanced, which means that it is good at shooting incandescent light, meaning that it's like good at reproducing colors in low light situations.
All around, it sounds like a pretty good product, basically.
It's like universally loved.
Sure.
It's people are like, wow, this is cool. And the way that they made it is they took motion picture film, so like film used for shooting movies, and film made for shooting movies is not made for shooting still photography. It has something on it called a remjet layer, REMJET layer, and this layer of the film is designed to protect the film when it's like spinning through a video camera at really high speeds. It like protects the film. But that layer makes it really hard to develop the film after you've shot it if you're using it for still photography.
Mm-hmm.
So they started using this this chemical process to remove that layer before someone shoots images with it. This is not a process that this is not a concept that they invented. Like, people had been DIYing this for a while. Kodak like published formula for how to do it at some point. But what CineStill did was like they commercialized it.
Mm-hmm.
So they were taking Kodak film, doing this Kodak motion picture film, doing this process to it, and then selling rolls of it to the general public. And it has this like really distinctive look that everyone thinks is really cool.
Right.
Or at least I think is really cool. Most people seem to think is really cool.
And then smaller people also sell the film? Like, how do the smaller players come in?
So this, like, everyone like lives in harmony for a little while because everyone's like, wow, CineStill, very cool company, like sells this really cool film.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Like,
love it. Yeah.
Like couple years pass, and then other companies realize that they can make this a very similar type of film. I hesitate to say it's the same film, but like many people I talk to believe that the upstart companies are selling basically the same film. So the upstart companies are basically doing the same process where they're taking like Kodak motion picture film and they're doing this process to it and they're selling it. And a lot of them are selling it as 800T, or they were selling it as 800T. And CineStill is very mad about this because these are competitive products.
Right.
And CineStill got a trademark for the term 800T and 800 tungsten,
Mm-hmm.
which is describing what the film is. It's 800 ISO and it's tungsten balanced. But CineStill has this whole like trademark page on its website where it says like, here's what you can say, here's what you can't say, blah, blah, blah. A lot of the companies that are making the film, though, are like based in China. They perhaps don't give a shit about American law. Like they may not care. I don't know. They didn't respond to me, but they were selling film that was being advertised as like, one brand is called Reflex, like Reflex 800T.
Right.
There's a company called Amber that is selling T800. And then there's this company in New York City that's new that's selling this film called 800T as well. But they all have different brand names. They all have different, like, very different packaging. But so here's where the story is.
Yes.
There's all these like upstart little companies like Camera Shop, eBay Seller, Community Darkroom, who are selling these competitive products to CineStill. And in their online advertisements, they were like, Reflex 800T. One of them was selling it with something that was like 800T, better than CineStill, or just like CineStill, something like this. Like, there were a couple variations. And so the people who are selling this film, these other competitive brands of film, start getting these quote unquote polite emails from CineStill.
That CineStill is what they categorize them as polite emails. Is that right?
Yes, they categorize them as polite emails. And so I got some of these emails, and they are friendly in that they're like, hello, we love film photography, we really want to help you. Our lawyers are CC'd. We want to politely inform you that you need to change the title of your listing, or like they will get involved. Like, that's what the emails say.
Right.
And so people get these emails and they start freaking out, obviously, because they're like, well, one person I spoke to is an eBay seller who sells film out of his bedroom, and his listings kept getting taken down off eBay.
Like a random guy, basically.
Random guy.
Not even like a small business. It's like one dude. Yeah.
It's like a photographer who, like, as a side hustle, sells film on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this store in Boston that got a similar letter. Bushwick Community Darkroom got a similar letter, and so all of them told me that they didn't really do anything at first. Like, they got this letter and they were scared because it, I think in the industry we call it a vaguely legal shaped object.
Yes.
It's like not necessarily like a specific legal threat, but also like, hey, we have lawyers.
Yeah, it smells legally as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they didn't do anything, but then the eBay guy, the guy who sells film on eBay, gets another listing taken down, and he gets like threatened to have his eBay account deleted by eBay.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, fuck this. Like, I'm scared. Like, I don't like this. And so he posted on the analog community subreddit, which is the film community subreddit. And he's like, hey, I don't know what to do here. And then all these people are like, oh, we also got similar things. We're also scared. We
Right.
also don't know what's going on.
It turns out it's a much broader thing, and CineStill is sending a lot of polite emails to basically the whole community. Yeah.
To like, I mean, people described it as like anyone who used 800T like anywhere on the internet in conjunction with like a non-CineStill branded product, which we don't know. Like, we don't know if that's how exactly CineStill was finding these things, but like the two reasons I find this very interesting is like, one, it's like CineStill told me in its email, like, oh, we just were looking around the internet and we were politely informing everyone who was misappropriating our trademark that they needed to stop.
Right. Does it then escalate at all? Or sort of what is...
So one guy is sort of fighting it. He's like, hey, like, here are my lawyers. Talk to my lawyers. This guy in Boston, like, talk to my lawyers. And so then they start exchanging like actual legal letters. And he describes it as like an open case. Like, it's not a case because there's no lawsuit.
Right.
But it's like it's a pending legal matter. So they're both spending money on lawyers. No one's happy. And they're sort of going back and forth. And then the community itself is just like, there's a hashtag like stop buying CineStill. Like, we don't like this. We're very mad because this is an industry that was basically dead a decade ago, like essentially dead. And now it's resurged, but it's resurged in such a way that like single people can make a living developing film. And I don't know, like where I live, there's like 4 dark rooms in, the second largest city in the country. Like, there's not a lot of these businesses left.
Right.
And so the community sees it as like this relatively large company. Like, CineStill says it's only 12 people, but in the industry, it's like, it's very well known now. It's large. It's not Kodak sized, but it's not random guy in bedroom sized either.
Sure. It's big enough to maybe squash the random guys in bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, hey, like, they're pushing us around and we don't like it. And then I spoke to a bunch of lawyers, and the lawyers are like I spoke to academic, like law professors, et cetera. And the law professors are like, I don't know, man. Like, it's a pretty complicated case. Like, it's definitely not open and shut in terms of like, should CineStill win? Like, if this were to be litigated, they're like, it's 800 speed tungsten film. Like, how else are people supposed to describe it?
Right.
Is sort of their thought.
Because it's not like the trademark is really for a name, like super quick, good film. I don't know, just something like that. It is literally the parameters of the product. And like, theoretically, you could buy 800T film because you're looking for film with those characteristics. Yeah, they're trademarking characteristics rather than a name, basically. And I guess it's an open question about whether that's actually enforceable or not.
Yeah. And so I don't know if we're going to like get a resolution to this, because it would require someone to say, sue me, like, go ahead, sue me.
Right.
And then it would need to be litigated in court. And then the court would need to decide, like, was this trademark properly granted, for one? And for two, like, was the use of this trademark by these other companies infringing? Like, all that said, the reason I find it so interesting is that we see this like all the time with companies like Nintendo, with companies like Microsoft. Like, it's come up with AI generated stuff. It's just like, where does a company's trademark start and end? And like, what level of trademark policing is sufficient? And I think that when it's a company like Nintendo, it's like the games industry is gigantic with all these tons of companies, although Nintendo has enforced its trademarks against like really small players as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there's not been a successful like cancel Nintendo, like I'm not buying Mario because of what you've done. Like maybe some people have made that sort of like ethical choice, but there's not been a movement like this.
Right.
And so here it's like the community is so small that it's not just a legal question, but it's like a public relations question too. It's like, should they have done this, or should they have just done nothing at all? Said, hey, we think our film is the best. Everyone knows it's the best, because that's what everyone said. It's like everyone is like, CineStill makes the best version of this film. If you want to buy cheaper like imitations, you can, like that you can as a choice. Like it's like buying a generic brand like Frosted Flakes at the store, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar, but it's not necessarily as good. And Kellogg's Frosted Flakes still sells tons of boxes of cereal, and that's sort of like how it was painted to me. So I think it's a really interesting story. I don't know, check it out. It's very long.
Yeah.
Goes into the weeds. I'm sorry.
No. It's a classic Jason 404 Media story. Same with the ticket seller stuff. And I'm really glad you're digging into it, and I'm sure you'll continue to follow it if there are any more legal ramifications from it. But with that, I guess I will play us out. As a reminder, 404 Media is journalist founded and supported by subscribers. If you wish to subscribe to 404 Media and directly support our work, please go to 404media.co. You'll get unlimited access to our articles and an ad-free version of this podcast. Another way to support us is by leaving a 5-star rating and a review. Here is one of those reviews from Samir Mon. Check out the Instagram episode about the ads for drugs. Really informative from a trustworthy team of journalists. Yeah, definitely go listen to our previous episodes if you haven't already. We always do our own stories. We don't always follow the news. So this has been 404 Media. We will see you again next week.